problem. We've got 1 minute to fix it. And I don't want to start too early or else that's a lot of dead, boring time at the start of every video. At this point, we usually just run the clock. We'll start officially every time right at 1 o'clock sharp. Well, it's time. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the fall 2026 semester. For this course, we're going to be talking every day, every week for about 3 days a week about statistical topics and statistical reasoning. And as the Canvas page kind of indicates, we have a lot to talk about today just to introduce the course, get started to show how everything is going to work. But first, I should ask any questions that you have right away. Okay. Well, as far as this course is going to run, one of the things I like to do to start off class is give you a good feel for what it really looks like on my end so that you can get a good idea in your head how things operate in this class. On my end for this class, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Hang on, let me reshare. No, I expanded that. That's what I did. Hang on. It's been a little while. Okay, so I'm trying to take a screenshot, and that way I can show you what my viewpoint looks like. So this is it. This is what I see every time I'm teaching. It's pretty busy screen, and there's not a whole lot of real estate for what I can do with this screen. I only have one monitor teaching in the classroom, so I don't have a separate screen for, say, everyone's participants. I just try to get it all into this one big view. So this is where in the middle, we'll be doing lots of the actual mathematics and things. I'll always have available my viewpoint, this screen, hold open. And this is where I'm just looking at how the class is doing. You can use a lot of reaction tools like hand raise, that kind of stuff, thumbs up, and so on. I'll be able to determine if you have a mic connected, web camera connected, that kind of stuff. And that's how I assess your understanding, always trying to look to the far right here. So if you have a microphone connected, that's great. That's a great way to participate in class. But if you're in a really busy environment or you just prefer to do so, you're welcome to just type out any question whatsoever, even right now if one's popping up into your mind, directly into the chat. When that happens, something is going to pop up right here, a little notification that says I have a chat. And it takes me a while to get into a really good habit of noticing that. That's a really small spot on my screen. So if you send out a chat and I don't notice it, you could just send it out again and it's going to start updating. Or anyone in the class at any time can just say, hey, Mike, you missed a chat. And I'll be happy to pause things, address the chat, and go from there. If you send something out through the chat, just because we're trying to record all the lectures and get all the questions recorded as well, I might read out your chat, possibly paraphrasing it and so on. Other thing I want to mention is because my real estate is so tight here, there's not a lot of actual area. I was meant to use the eraser. Let me try again. Instead of being on camera, you're not required to do so. I'm usually looking here to see who's talking. I keep that entire camera view just collapse into that one little spot there. So if you prefer to be on camera, no harm done, but it's not required whatsoever. In fact, I usually am not able to see your faces whatsoever unless it's at the very start of class or I'm transitioning to getting the recording started about 10 minutes before class starts. But that's my spiel for what it looks like, how this class is going to run. I'll be using the digital pen quite a lot, writing over the top of notes. And so if you can see this writing here, then you're in pretty good shape. If it's too small, don't hesitate to ask if I can zoom in. I'll be happy to do so. But you should be on a screen that's bigger than, say, a cell phone for sure. If you're on a tablet, it should be a slightly larger tablet, not like an 8-inch tablet. Everything's going to be probably too small to see. A slightly bigger laptop, 15-inch screen, or just an ordinary big monitor would probably be the better choice for viewing the information in this class. So that's the introduction to what it looks like on my end. Any questions or thoughts at the moment? Okay, well, so far, what we'll be doing today is going over the syllabus, introducing the entire Canvas page here. There's, again, a lot of information to show how the online textbook can be accessed, how the online homework is done. And if you have a little bit of time at the end, we'll start our very first chapter number 1 down at the bottom here. Essentially, everything that happens in class goes through Canvas. So when you come to class on any day, any given week, usually I'm just going to have the Canvas page scrolled to where we are, some information, maybe not this much, drawn out, boxes put on to show you what we're about to do, where we're going. But let's start by looking through the syllabus. We're not going to do a full entire reading of the syllabus, but just look into a couple things, take some questions. It's this document here. I have exactly the same Word document as well that we can draw on if we decide to. So here's our class, Math 1153, Section P, Section 30. For as far as the class meetings, looks like just about everyone was successful. We have 16 people all together. We meet on kind of a strange schedule for this campus. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. A Monday, Wednesday, Friday might have made more sense, but because I'm based on the Idaho Falls campus, something about the Idaho Falls campus discourages them for scheduling on Friday. I don't know why that is. I've never got a good answer. So we'll be pretty busy at the start of the week, Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is going to be kind of like a catch-up day, get caught up with homework, ask questions. And Thursday, we finish out the week. And again, we don't want to read this whole thing. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it already, but maybe another thing to mention is if you have to get a hold of me for any reason for questions, here's 2 different ways for contact information. Most of the time, my cell phone is silenced, but if that's going to be the best way to get in contact with me, don't hesitate to work on that. I wrote the best way to contact me is through this email right here. And I'm just very, very highly responsive to emails. I check them pretty much habitually at the start of my day, towards the end of my day, which is anywhere between 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, depending on the day of the week. And any question you have, you can send right through there. They could be a general question about the class, a question about homework, a question about quizzes, anything whatsoever. And I encourage you to use it a lot, even if, say, you have a question that came up at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night. The best time to write your question is right at that moment. So don't feel like you have to sleep on it and then maybe forget what the question was on the next morning. You're never going to annoy me if you email me at 3 a.m. and so on. I'll just get to the emails at the very start of my day. So you can email me at any time. The reason I try to be very, very available through email is my office hours don't always work for everybody. It's hard to write down a set of office hours which works for everybody in every single class. But I'll always be available through office hours. Just pretend you're going to class. It'll be the same Zoom link. I'll just be sitting in Zoom until someone shows up. They're considered walk-in office hours. So you don't even have to run it by me that you're going to be there or what your question is. They'll be from Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 2:45 to 3:45. So after a break, after class, I just get right back on Zoom for questions. And Wednesday is the one that's a little bit different, a little bit earlier, right at the usual class time, 1 to 2:15. So if any questions come up, if there's a problem with the textbook, if there's a problem with the homework system, or any generic questions you ever have, either drop into office hours or send me an email and I'll be happy to work with you. Well, that's how to get in contact with me. Any questions or comments about that at the moment? Okay, I'm going to skip over the course text block. We're going to come back to that when we talk about how to use the Access Pearson link to open the online textbook through the homework system. If you're curious, it's Intro Stats, 6th edition, which is kind of wild to me because I took this class as an ISU student about year 2004 through that same textbook. It was the 2nd edition, and not a whole lot has changed. So I guess it's just a favorite for this particular university and a lot of others. Maybe the bigger thing to talk about is the calculator policy. Sometimes the statistics class is a little bit annoying because we do some pretty heavy computations, which does require a robust calculator. So if you don't have a TI-84 calculator right now, if you don't have one for the first couple of weeks even, that would be okay. I wouldn't drop the class over anything like that. But I would try to find a way, get a plan going of obtaining one of these calculators as soon as possible. They aren't cheap. They cost about $100 if you're going to, say, Walmart or Amazon.com. If you can find a used version, say from a student that's already taken the class, maybe some other online seller, Facebook Marketplace, and so on, then I'd say getting a used one is a great way to go. They're hard to break, so you'd be in great shape with one of these. They're necessary for exams, and so I had another link right here for that calculator. This is about what it looks like. So this is the exact model that I'll be using in class, the TI-84 Plus. If you're buying one yourself, there's different kinds of models. There's the TI-84 Plus CE edition. Some of them have a nicer upgrade display. You can charge them through a cable. This is just the basic one that you plug batteries into and work through. So that's the one I'll be using and demonstrating right here through the class. Anytime whatsoever that we do something that requires this calculator, I'll always physically pull up this calculator, use the red dot indicator to show you exactly how to use it. So we'll be learning this calculator as a side topic every time it comes up in class. Well, any questions at all, folks, about the calculator or otherwise?
So using a newer model is fine.
It is, absolutely. There's going to be a couple spots where there's some slight changes or slight differences between what you see on the screen and what I show on the screen here. But in my experience, they're very, very minimal, and they usually don't cause any problems whatsoever. So if it's a TI-84 Plus, but slightly different look, maybe, again, a color display, something like that, then you're going to be in great shape. If you're just not sure, what you can do at any point is just grab your cell phone, take a picture of your calculator, send it to my email, and I'll be happy to take a look at that specific model and give you a better answer. Yes, go ahead, Nikizaka.
It's Nekizaka.
Nikizaka, thank you.
I wanted to ask about an app. It said that there was going to be an app we needed to download for the calculator.
For this class, there's no particular app. It would be the calculator
Okay.
itself.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah, I think some classes might have an app that they're offering, but the reason that doesn't work too well for this class is in the exam setting, they ask us to not use our calculators in the Pocatello Testing Center, Idaho Falls Testing Center, and otherwise. So the best practice is just have a calculator that would be allowed and permitted for exams themselves. Other questions about the calculator at the moment? Okay. And if it ever comes up, if you're looking into buying one of these calculators and you just decide, well, you might notice in a lot of stores, a Casio calculator is sometimes just a third of the cost of the TI-84 Plus. So if you want to use a different calculator, one that might be cheaper than this one, you're welcome to do so yourself as well. Just know that it might imply a little bit extra work on your end because the buttons that we press aren't going to translate to the buttons that you have to press. So you'd have to be willing to do the little bit extra research to figure out exactly how to use your particular calculator. And also, if you do buy something that's a non-TI-84 calculator, a non-TI calculator, Casio or otherwise, you should look really carefully at the feature set that it can do all the statistical things required in this class. And like I mentioned before, if you're not sure, just send me a quick email at any time. Just go to, say, where's my syllabus? That email right there, or send me a message directly through Canvas. Tell me what calculator model that you're looking into buying, and I'll let you know if it can do everything that's required for our particular class. If you're, again, aren't too excited about learning a totally different calculator on your own, this one is a good option because it's the more standard one. You'll be able to practice along in class to learn the calculator, so you'll be in good shape to use it on the homework. And then when it comes time to use that calculator in the exam setting, you'll already be ready to go on how to work all the functions that are necessary on the exam. But again, this is a good topic to begin talking about right away. There's usually a lot of introductory topics in this class. Anna says, does a TI-30XS calculator work? That's a good question. I should know about that one, but I'm going to have to double check. And I will get back to you right away on Tuesday. So this is my reminder file. Find all caps is a great way to remind me to come back to it. Okay, I'll send you a message and report back to the entire class as well about that particular calculator. Other questions so far? Okay. Well, for the other elements of the syllabus, again, there's lots to run through here. We're not going to read it every single line. I'll skip the course description and objectives because those make more sense at the end of the semester. Other big thing that we'll talk about after going through the syllabus is how the online homework system is going to work. But just to finish up the syllabus, I just wanted to mention a couple other elements. There will be weekly quizzes that we'll have in Canvas, but we are skipping week 1 because I feel like there's just enough stuff going on in the very first week. So we'll talk a little bit more about quizzes on week 2 at the very start. I'll have the quiz number 2 posted. We'll drop the lowest 2 quizzes at the end of the semester, and quizzes are just a way to get you some really fast practice so that I can see on paper how you solve a statistics problem. I grade them using the digital pen once again and send you the feedback once you complete grading a quiz. Homework is not meant to be so long and awful that it competes with quizzes. So quizzes are usually kind of short and sweet, just one fast problem, and the homework as well is well contained. So between the homework and the quizzes, it won't feel like there's a whole lot of extra burdens and things to keep track of. Also, we'll have in this class 3 75-minute exams, a comprehensive final exam, and for every one of the exams, you'll be allowed a page of notes. There'll be a 8.5 by 11-inch page of notes. Front and back, these can be pre-handwritten or machine printed, so it'll be up to you how you want to format your notes. And it can include any information whatsoever, whether they're formulas from statistics, definitions, examples, or not a bad idea sometimes is just step-by-step calculator notes, so you can remember, well, how to produce a scatter plot or how to use a normal distribution and so on. So that'll be the purpose of the notes on each of the exams. And exams are always something extra to talk about for this class. Even though this is a fully online classroom, there's no one in class with me, everyone is here through Zoom. The mathematics and statistics department does require in-person exams. So one thing I'll be doing at the start of week number 2 is directly contacting everyone in class to determine where your preferred testing center might be to take exams in the class. That could be the Pocatello Testing Center, maybe the Idaho Falls Testing Center, and many others, say the Meridian Testing Center, Twin Falls Testing Center, and so on. So I'll be asking you at the start of week number 2 where your preferred testing center is. But if you want to let me know right away, don't hesitate to send an email or a message through Canvas, and I'll be building out those preferred locations for exams. Well, this feels like a good place to pause usually around exams. Any questions about how exams will run or anything otherwise? Okay, and maybe just to give you a little bit more of a feel of how it feels like going into exam one, into exam two, and so on. Essentially, what happens with the course is every big date is available on Canvas already. We're building out the weeks on a week by week basis. So some of them are kind of empty, like week number 2. And once we get down to week number 4, that's going to be a really pivotal week for us because exam 1 is going to be on week number 5. The official date is Monday. So what will happen is on week number 4, on Monday morning, first thing, or possibly Sunday evening, so I'm not overloaded on Monday, I'm going to send everyone in class instructions on how to schedule your exam 1, going by your preferred testing center. So I'll be giving exact instructions. You're welcome to ask about scheduling in class as well. And as we're going from week number 3 into week number 4, since the exam is on the next week, this is about when you'll start seeing review problems. I'll say what the exact coverage is for exam 1. It's empty right now because it depends on our pacing in the class. So I'll tell you exactly what's on exam 1, as well as additional review problems that'll help you be successful on that exam. But that's pretty much the experience. Once we get through exam 1, it's like it all starts all over again. We go through another cycle, and there's no midterm on midterm week, but it's leading us into exam 2. So on the start of midterm week, we start planning. I'll send out instructions on scheduling your second exam, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much the experience with exams. And as far as the breakdown goes for the course, here's what the breakdown looks like. The MyLab homework is going to be the standard practice that you would be doing after class, each class meeting, probably getting caught up on Friday, possibly the weekend. Quizzes, I release 1 quiz problem per week. Again, these are usually short and sweet, so they don't overcompete with the homework. There'll be 3 exams. They'll also be worth 15% each for a total of 45%. The final exam is comprehensive, and it'll be 25%. So the thing to note is, if you're getting through the homework and the quizzes, staying completely caught up here, that's worth more than the final exam. And the way I write my exams is I take a look at what we did in class, what the actual lectures were, what we solved. I take a look at what was assigned as quizzes or homework, and I base my exams on what we actually did in class. So if you're coming to class, asking questions on the lecture notes, staying caught up on your homework, your weekly quizzes, then the exam should feel kind of like a formality. It's a way to refresh that information. You'll have more sample problems, and you're essentially studying every single day that we finish off a lecture note. That's our very first one, and you get through these 2 elements of the course. Well, that's essentially the main parts of the syllabus. Any last questions or comments before we take a look into the homework system? Okay, well, there's more things to take a look into here. If you have the time, I would definitely skim through. On the very bottom, oh, I forgot this schedule here. Let me complete the thought. On the very bottom is a syllabus supplement written by the math department. This would be a good thing to take a look into, skim through, to see additional policies about how the math department expects these classes to run. And there's great stuff in here. Say, for example, if you have, there's information on academic integrity, information on, let's see, Title IX, extremely important federal law, closed week policy, and there's one I was looking for that I skimmed through and missed. I should probably read it myself. But I would encourage you to read through this to get a feel for other things, other resources that are available to you on the very end of the syllabus. And the thing I forgot to mention is this is our day-by-day schedule. This one is subject to change For example, if we decide to just take extra time in maybe chapter 3, we'll make that happen. If there's questions on it to start off a day, we take extra time, maybe we'll finish it on Thursday, or maybe a Wednesday after our exam 1. So a lot of the sections here are tentative. The only things that are firm are definitely that holiday right there. We're absolutely going to take that Labor Day holiday. The exam dates are firm. Autumn break, we're never going to move that one as well. And finals week is what it is, finals week. So these are on the date on Monday on the left column. And this is just a rough schedule of what we tend to achieve. We're going to go for ending on chapter 17 in this course. We'll end it on Monday of this week here, and then have at least 2 days to review. So even if we get a little bit behind, I want to make that firm that will take at least 2 days, no matter what, to review for the final exam. So that's our day-by-day syllabus. And again, there's lots of stuff that we talk about. Sometimes day 1 is kind of overwhelming. That's one good reason why it's recorded. You can go back here at any point, see the recording. So if your internet had a problem, it cut out, anything happened, maybe you came in late, you can always see what happened at the first part of class through this file right here. Well, at this stage, we're about ready to go back to the Access Pearson link. But any last questions or thoughts before we take a look into the online textbook? Okay, well, a lot of people have already done this. I saw at the start of class, not a lot, but several people have already done this to get started going in with this course. You can click on the ISU book bundle link, but I think the Access Pearson link, the one I put at the very top of the Canvas page, is the better place to go. First time you click on this, it's going to ask you to link your Canvas page with MyLab, so it might look a little bit different with what I see here. If you're in the ISU book bundle, then it goes pretty seamless. If you've opted out of ISU book bundle, then it's going to ask you to pay for access. I believe the cost is $120, but there's 2-week grace period. I know $100 on its own is quite a bit to break the bank on the start of school. And so you have free access to the textbook and the homework system for 2 weeks before it starts asking us for money if you opted out of the book bundle. So this link right here is your one-stop shop for just going right into the textbook. You click on the link here. This page, once again, might look a little bit different depending on if you've clicked it before or haven't yet. There's more links to click on. Let me click on Open Pearson. And this page is probably different from you. Different for you. Let me click on Allow those cookies. Here you might have something that says to link in the Canvas page. It's hard for me to know exactly what it looks like from your point of view. Pearson is not really great at sharing that kind of information with instructors. But what you want to do is click on Link Your Canvas page. Once you do that, you can open the MyLab and Mastering and get into the homework system. Let me click on that button and pause for just a minute if you're clicking through things. Okay, so this is about where you end up after clicking through, linking Canvas to the MyLab Math. They change the name sometimes depending on where you're at. Any questions at the moment getting inside here? Okay, again, this is a tricky part of the course to describe how to get inside here because it's a little bit different from people depending on if you're in the book bundle program or you opted out. But it should work seamlessly to get it once you get it all started. If you need to go back, you can just click on Access Pearson again, or you could just click on this right here. This is the homework assignment. It takes you right back to the Access Pearson. So this is supposedly the student home. It might look slightly different for you. Maybe the stuff on the left panel looks a little bit different. But this is essentially the experience of the homework system and textbook, online textbook. It takes you to about this page. Usually I kind of ignore the calculator and focus a little bit more on what's going on here. These things, these are the homework assignments. The due dates, they're in flux because they depend on when we finish the section. If we finish this section, chapter 1, on say Tuesday, I'll give a 1-week turnaround and the due date is set to be September 1st. If we take a little bit extra time in chapter 1 and we in fact finish it on Thursday, I delay the due date to September 3rd by just moving it here. So these due dates are in flux, and the idea is there'll always be a 1-week turnaround on homework due dates after we fully 100% finish the lecture notes for that section or chapter. So I'll talk a little bit more about the homework system, possibly on Tuesday, after people have had a chance to get inside here, get started and working around with it. But the thing I want to show right away before I forget to do so is the textbook is also bundled with this. And it's this link right here, eText Contents. So to open up the textbook, usually what I do personally is I click here. Then I ignore this little index side panel. I just click on this link right here. You might find a better way, depending on if you're using, say, an app through iOS or the Android store. I usually just click on Mobile Access eText. Then our textbook starts loading. It's weird to have a textbook load. And what I found is just ignore all warnings. It's going to work one way or another, so I just click through these often. This is the front page of the textbook. So if you were, say, doing the reading for tomorrow's lecture, where we're covering chapter 1, you would go over here or type in the page number if you have that down pat. Most people are going to just click open table of contents, scroll for a little bit. Here's chapter 1, stats, starts here. Click on that and here we are. This is the textbook experience. As far as an online textbook goes, it's about as clunky as all the rest of them, but this is a exact replication of the real textbook. You can scroll through here. The graphics are put in the middle instead of on the left side panel as in a real textbook. As you go through, just click on the right button to turn the page essentially. And this is what the reading looks like. The author is pretty wordy, but in a way that's kind of nice for these kind of textbooks. It's less technical, and the author actually is trying to write down some prose, have a conversation with what we're getting into, what we're about to learn. Throw some comics in there, which are sometimes humorous. Once you read through all this, there's eventually examples in here. They have a lot to talk about in chapter 1. And ethics. This is a lot of reading. I'm just trying to get to an example. Here's what the examples look like. So these are the typical questions that kind of guide the understanding of what you've just read in the textbook. Ask a direct question. What I would encourage you to do when you're reading an example like this in any math book, not just in the statistics class, is try to answer the question as best you can. Just on paper, try to do as much active learning as you can by writing things down, answering the question on paper. Then scroll down, take a look into the answer, see how the textbook answered it. And that will give you a lot of traction on your brain for internalizing how these kind of problems will go, how they work. What we'll be doing in class is not these examples. This is just part of the reading. I have my own set of examples, which will help you get through the homework, the quizzes, and eventually the exams. And there's AI tools on here. I usually just click this away and it'll eventually stop annoying you every time it pops up. But that's how to get into the system. Go to this link here again to get into the textbook. And I'll talk a little bit more about all of this again on Tuesday so it doesn't feel like we're cramming in a bunch of stuff. I'll talk a little bit more about what it looks like to do the homework, punching in answers and that kind of stuff. So I'd say a good thing to do after class today is access this link. If you haven't done so already, access Pearson. Get started with just logging into the system, playing around with it, opening out the textbook. And if you have any questions whatsoever, we'll talk a lot more about it on Tuesday. But I should ask right now, are there any questions that folks have at the moment? Okay, let me close these out. So we did most of the main introductions for the course. Let's see here. We have the optional reading. We have the recorded lectures after our class is over. The first lecture will be posted there. If I'm ever missing a lecture, just let me know. I might have just forgot to put in the playlist. Other elements of the Canvas webpage are the blank lecture notes. These are being built out just section by section, chapter by chapter. So this is the stuff we have available. And this builds out as we go through the semester. And currently, here's where we're at. Chapter 1, stat starts here. We have the blank lecture note right here that we see here. It's the same exact file as the one I'll pull up here from as a Word document. So this file, stats starts here, is exactly the same as this one, but this is the one that we'll solve. So essentially, one way to work through this course is it might be a good idea before class even starts to go to the blank lecture notes, or if this is blank, that works just fine as well. Print out this file, or maybe just download this file, and we'll be filling these out, solving them as a class as if they're just really just giant worksheets, demonstrating how all the ideas, definitions, and terminologies work together, solving problems similar to what you saw in the examples in the textbook itself. Once we solve a section, we post all the solutions right here. And so this becomes kind of a living Canvas document where things are updated quite a lot throughout the semester. You can come back here to see how we solved something if you're, say, doing a quiz or studying for an exam. And if you want chapter 1 but blank, it's always going to be available here as both a PDF and a Microsoft Word document. Then the link right down below it, that's just the homework link. So again, we'll play a little bit more with that one as well. Shows the due date. All of them are going to be equally weighted at 10 points per each assignment. And so this is essentially how Canvas is going to run on a day-by-day basis. At this point, I've kind of ran out of things to say for introducing the course. We're going to do a little bit of work here in chapter 1, and then probably end up quite a bit early today, since I don't want to overload everyone. There's usually day 1 is pretty overwhelming, not just for this class, but your other classes. On a typical day, we'll try to end as close as we can to right around 2:10 p.m. I'll try not to ever go over. But any last questions or thoughts, folks? Burning questions before we jump into the first topic, chapter 1? Okay, well, we'll talk a lot about some of the things we mentioned before, but let's get started with introducing statistics through the actual coursework of statistics. So here's our first lecture notes. Again, you might have already downloaded it, maybe printed it out. If you downloaded it, maybe you're going to type out some answers as we go along with the class, maybe use a digital pen. If you printed it, maybe you're just going to use a pen or pencil, write down some notes on it as well. You don't have to do either of those things. Everyone learns a little bit differently. But what I would encourage you is try to do this class in as active way as possible. Even if you don't download these or print them out, have some scratch paper nearby as a third option, and just jot down some information as we're solving these as a class. The more you can kind of involve your mind looking through these, asking questions through Canvas or not Canvas, asking questions through Zoom using your voice or through chat, the easier it is to absorb this kind of information. You'll find that if you follow a process of reading the chapter first, even if you're just skimming it, it kind of puts little blanks for your brain to fill in. Then when we go to actually do the problems, these won't be things you saw for the very first time. It'll be easier to follow along with the lecture. So try to read the chapter section first, follow along, be as active as possible as we're doing the lecture. Then after we do that, finish this 100%, do the homework again, you'll be reviewing the topics, and it'll feel a lot easier trying to do that homework if you've already been exposed to the information in those two separate ways, through the reading and the lecture notes. So let's start off in earnest. I have two majorly important definitions to statistics: population versus sample. And this is a pretty similar organization to how we'll do a lot of problems. I'll have definitions at the very top, a little border, and some work that we're going to do immediately to illustrate how those definitions work. So this is our first problem of the day. We'll probably end class after getting through this one. But let's read through these clearly to see what's going on. It says the population is the entire collection of individuals or objects that you want to learn about. Let me add a quick edit here. I want to emphasize it's everybody, the entire collection. So I put in an extra word here that says all. I wrote that in after the fact that you might have already printed those out. So I'm going to put that in red to say I typed in something additional. I feel like that's a good emphasis to make. The population is all individuals or all things. We want to study a lot of interesting populations, but one problem that we run into in statistics is sometimes it's impossible to study all individuals. If individuals happen to be, for example, ISU students, then you all are a part of that population, but studying all ISU students could be a monumental task, especially if there's, say, some third-party marketing company that just wants to contact every single ISU student. That costs a lot of time, a lot of money. That's not a practical study in a lot of cases. So although the population is the thing we want to learn about, we often learn about the population through a sample. A sample is a part, or you could say a subset of the population that's actually selected and studied. So that's the major idea so far. Think of the population as everybody, but we can't contact and study everybody. So we take a small part, a sample, and that's what we actually study. And whatever we learn from that sample, we try to reflect it back to the population. So that's what statistics is all about. We're going to be using these definitions actually a lot. There'll be some chapters where they seem to go away, but then maybe we're on week 8, 9, 10 through 15, and they seems to be, it's all about population sample once again. Any questions or comments with those first two definitions? Okay, so this is where statistics sometimes gets kind of tough. It's one thing to read a definition like this, population versus sample, read it verbatim, maybe even memorize it verbatim by rote memorization, but it's a whole new thing to actually see how to use those definitions in a particular problem context, like in example 1. So all of this is the context of the problem. Sometimes the context is a little bit short. Sometimes there's a lot to it. There's a lot of reading. And oftentimes the context will contain real world data. It's older data from 2008, but still really important. So we solve a lot of word problems, and this is a tricky skill, but we have 16 weeks to do this. We'll be emphasizing these skills of breaking down the context of a problem like this, turning it over to study whatever definition we're looking into in context. First thing we have to do is just read through it. It's not a bad idea to read these several times, once to introduce the problem, again as you're solving these, and maybe a whole third time to just double check your solution to make sure everything really fits. So it says to start this out, the technology underlying hip replacements has changed as these operations have become popular. We're told that in the year 2008, there's over 100,000 hip replacements in the United States. So that certainly sounds popular. Now we're going back further in time. Starting in the year 2008, highly durable ceramic hips were marketed, which sounds great. If you're going to get a total hip replacement, that's a extremely traumatic thing to come back from. So durable hips sounds nice, but it says, unfortunately, for too many patients, the increase in durability has been counterbalanced, it sounds like a pun, by an increased incidence of squeaking. And it sounds silly and not like really a big deal, but you can imagine maybe one of your parents got a total hip replacement. Everything is fine. They survived physical therapy, which is excruciating and traumatic all on its own. And then maybe a year later, their hip starts to squeak. It could be loud every time they bend over or every time they pivot. If you hear a sound like that, that could be something that drives you literally insane. So this is a horrible outcome. And you can't just fix these things and do a whole new total hip replacement necessarily. And so this is a really big deal now. Let's highlight this. This seems to be kind of what the thrust of the study is all about. A total hip replacement where the ceramic hip had an increase in squeaking. I thought I was going to say developed squeaking at some point, maybe immediately or maybe sometime down the line, even years later. So this whole paragraph right here, it just gave us nothing but pure context. There's no numbers there that we can take going beyond that context. But the next paragraph, this is where the study comes in. This is what was actually done. In the May 2008 issue of the New York Times, it reported that in one study of 143 individuals who received ceramic hips between the years 2003-2005, 10 of the hips developed squeaking. So that's the outcome that was mentioned in the prior example above. And this is the study that's investigating that particular phenomenon. Very unfortunate one. Well, we did it. That's the entirety of the context. Let's now think about it, absorb it for a moment. What we want to do now is think about this entire set of context from top to bottom, from here all the way to here, once again, and now think about what is the population and what is the sample. Again, this is not an easy skill. Some people are just naturally good at this. If you're one of those persons, good on you. For me, when I remember taking statistics in 2004, this was something that was tough to me. I didn't particularly like word problems, and having to read a problem over and over again to dig out what is the actual population, what is the actual sample, it was tough. It was something that I learned as a skill over the course of a semester. So let's pause for a moment. Any volunteers for what the population might be? Good call, folks. It's not quite the 143, but that 143 is important. So you're seeing the right element of the study that's important for population versus sample. Again, it is really kind of tricky on this one. And don't worry, we're going to do these kind of examples a lot. So we're going to get a feel for how these kind of problems go. So that 143 is important. Let's think again about what is the population? The population is the entire collection of all individuals or objects you want to learn about. The start of the problem was talking about how in just the year 2008, there's over 250,000 ceramic hip replacements. But we're concerned about the years 2003, 2005 specifically. So that's tricky, right? When it says a study was done, and they're talking about ceramic hip replacements between these 2 years, 2003, 2005, it means it wasn't even talking about that number either. That number was just fluff. It was trying to just justify why the ceramic hip replacement became popular. So the answer to population versus sample turns out it's more than just a number. It's something that we have to write out using just ordinary words, using the context, which is sometimes one of the major challenges of statistics. So let's take a look at this again. Again, sometimes the skill is we read these problems multiple times to try to suss out what is each of these elements, population versus sample. With the May 2008 study, want to learn about ceramic hips only between the years 2003-2005, what the authors of this New York Times article knew is they couldn't contact everybody. That's a monumental task, and that could have taken years to get in hold of every single person with a ceramic hip replacement between 2003 to 2005. So they contacted 143 individuals instead. That's the sample. Notice the population is harder to find out. Oh, hang on, I color code that in the reverse. Let me color code it this way. This is the sample. It was just the 143 individuals who had the ceramic hips replaced in 2003 to 2005 that the New York Times actually contacted. So we can say for the sample, it is, let me fix that pen. The 143 individuals, let me work on my penmanship as well, with a ceramic hip replacement. You can be more specific and say between the years 2003, 2005. If you ended it right here, I would consider that to be a full credit answer on, say, either a quiz or an exam situation. And when we say the population is everybody, the totality of all the hip replacements. So we'll say all individuals with a ceramic hip replacement between the years 2003 and 2005. So again, really kind of tricky in a certain sense, right? When we say the population is a collection of all individuals or objects you want to learn about, in this particular context, it would be all individuals who had the ceramic hip replacement. Some of them developed squeaking, 10 exactly, but we can't discuss all individuals with the ceramic hip replacements by actually studying them. That population is way too big, and by the time they complete that study, it might be 2027. Hip replacements have probably already changed quite a lot since 2008. So that's what the population is. This word right here is very important. The all and the all here means we're talking about everybody all at once. We want to learn about everybody, but to make our task doable, to be able to complete this article, the New York Times wanted to complete it probably that month or that year at the latest. The editor probably wants it that month more likely. They only contacted 143 individuals with a ceramic hip replacement, and they found out 10 of them developed squeaking. So if they did some computation here, it's not part of the problem, but this is probably what they were thinking. Take 10, divide by 143, you get this decimal number, go times 10, or excuse me, times 100 as a percentage. It would tell us that almost 7% of the sample, 143 individuals, had ceramic hips that squeaked. That would tell them the same might possibly be true for the population. There's some margin of error there we have to discuss, but that's how we're learning about the population, through a small but manageable sample that we can actually study and get an answer on in a reasonable amount of time. So that's our first illustration of the most important definitions in this entire course. To know what statistics are, we have to understand the dichotomy of population versus sample. Any questions or comments about this so far that you would like to discuss further? Okay, what makes this problem kind of fun is we're going to come back to this one. It's going to be beyond past midterms, but we're going to come back to this and do inferential statistics to show how are we going to estimate the true proportion or true percentage, said differently, of everybody in that population with a ceramic hip replacement that has squeaking hips. We can make that happen, so we're going to come back to this problem. This one is just a good problem to illustrate how these definitions work. And the reason they're such big, important definitions is whenever we write a conclusion to a statistical study, we have to know exactly what the population is, exactly what the sample is, or a conclusion will never make sense. So the important first step is deciding what these two terms are for the study, and then everything else flows. To get the numbers, it's all going to be math, but the hard work on statistics is breaking down the context. And so you'll see this in a lot of problems where it's going to say, describe a population using the context, describe the sample using the context, and that's what we mean in either case. There'll be the same kind of wording on a quiz situation, same kind of wording in an exam situation. And we'll practice these a lot so that you'll have a lot of practice on doing this kind of thing before, say, exam one comes around. But this is, again, a good vehicle for introducing what statistics is. We're going to come back to this and study this problem further as we go through the rest of the notes on this document down below. But again, like I mentioned before, I don't want to cram too much into the first day. I think this is possibly a good stopping point for us here today. My advice for before coming back on Tuesday, get into the MyLab system through Access Pearson, play around with the course a little bit more, and come back armed with questions. I'll be happy to discuss whichever questions come up, any issues that you might be experiencing. I want to demonstrate the homework system a little bit further. Then after that, we're just going to delve right back into these notes right here and start from where we left off. So after class ends, what I do is I upload whatever our solutions are, how far we got right here, so you'll know where we ended. Then I go put the recording into the playlist. Sometimes it takes a while for it to actually show up. YouTube has to do some processing in the back end. And then we'll just start it all over again. On Tuesday's class, I'm going to try to log in anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes early. So if you have questions at the very start of class, I'll be available as well. And then after class ends, I pretty much just take some questions, take a break, and then I log back in for office hours at 2:45. But that's kind of the whole experience. We'll be doing it over and over 3 times a week for 15 more weeks before finals. Any last questions or comments before we call it a day? Okay, well, have a great afternoon, folks. We'll be back to this tomorrow. I hope the rest of your classes go well, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
You too.
Have a good one.
Thanks.